anybody that's in any type of consulting, whether it's HR or finance, one of the biggest challenges, Jay, is always like ensuring that your clients know that you are available to them. Is because a lot of times I may not hear from them for a week and I'll get on my next call and they're like, oh, this happened. And they handled it in the wrong way, not the way that I would have handled it. And I'm like, well, why didn't you call me? And they're like, oh, we didn't want to bother you.
Welcome to Backstage Pass with the HR Rockstar, the show that pulls back the curtain and cranks up the volume on the most pressing HR topics, from talent strategies and workplace culture to career pivots and leadership. Because in today's world, HR isn't just behind the scenes, it's center stage. I'm your host, Jay Arnold, and in the world of HR and talent, there are times you recognize top performers within the workplace, sometimes referred to as rock stars. This podcast combines my love of HR as my career with my experience of 10 plus years performing shows around Michigan and the Midwest in my rock band, chasing the dream of being an actual rock star. Join me as I sit down with rock stars in their fields to have fun, insightful conversations that keep the human in human resources. Together we'll disrupt, innovate, and amplify the future of work. So grab your pass, turn it up, and let's make some noise. Joining me today is Brad Voorhees, owner and advisor of ScaleTX, where he works with small and medium-sized businesses that need guided HR counsel to scale to the next level. He also currently serves as President of Detroit SHRM, where you can find him at events around Metro Detroit. Welcome to the show, Brad. We've had the pleasure of seeing each other around town at HR events for a number of years. You're very active on LinkedIn. Before we get started, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Well, I will start with the stuff that people want to know, which is the personal side of me. I'm sure there'll be plenty of talk about what I do in the HR community and professionally, but I was born and raised here in Royal Oak. I'm a Royal Oak kid. My parents still live in the house that I grew up in, and I went to Royal Oak schools. I met my future wife in college at Oakland University. I was in a fraternity, she was in a sorority. Before we decided to start dating, we had each dated kind of I dated several of her sorority sisters prior. She had dated several of my fraternity brothers prior. Just our two organizations just always hung out. But eventually in 2006, I was lucky enough to, I guess, score that first date, and we've been married since 2012. We live in Royal Oak now, and I have two children. I have an 8-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son. And when I am not working and not doing anything on the professional side, I am dad of the year. That's a little bit about myself from a personal side and what I like to do hobby wise. I really enjoy watching baseball, specifically the Atlanta Braves. I'm a humongous Atlanta Braves fan. So it's spring training right now, and the season starts as of this recording 2 weeks from today. And I'm really looking forward to it.
I might surprise you. I'll go down to Comerica Park when they're playing the Tigers and just look for you and just pop in one day.
Yeah, well, what's nice is the Braves are actually coming to Detroit for a 3-game series this year, this season, upcoming season, and you can find me at all 3 games there, I can assure you. So
As far as your career, what inspired you to pursue a career in human resources, and how did your journey lead to the founding of ScaleTX?
So those are two different things. In terms of starting my career, I worked at a YMCA here in Royal Oak, almost the tail end of high school and almost all through college, at least my undergrad. I worked there for about 4 years, and I was a lifeguard and I did other things. And so it's not like I was in any type of management position. But what I did get to, being there for 4 years, essentially a full-time employee, I did get a lot of exposure to the management staff and the inner workings just of a business, albeit a nonprofit, it's still, just having that kind of direct exposure and daily activity. There was certainly people there that encouraged me to go into HR and get my undergrad in that. And then, of course, when I started college, I already mentioned the fraternity piece. There was several fraternity brothers who really helped push, me towards that direction. But I think what's most important to think about that is not necessarily why I got into it, but why I stayed, right? Because HR is all I've been doing since 2007. So I've been doing it for 18 years now. And, to do anything for 18 years, I don't care what it is, you really have to enjoy it, right? To stay and to continue to do it and, excel at your craft and continue to learn. So opportunities have opened up for me in my career that I'm extremely thankful for, that I've absolutely taken advantage of. But, for me, there is just a high sense of satisfaction about helping a business grow from the people lens. I consider myself a business professional first that just so happens to specialize in HR. And thankfully, now I've been doing this for 18 years, I can really rely and lean into a lot of the experiences that I've had. So these are things that have certainly kept me in the field that I've really enjoyed. And just from a professional satisfaction, it's certainly high on my list. The flip side, the story of getting into ScaleTX, not so not so fun. Like when you get kicked in the face and you lose your job, which is what happened to me in late 2019. You get, I guess, encouragement, whether that's, from friends or liquid encouragement. You're like, hey, I think I can do this. And so I was working for a company for prior like 2 years, 2.5 years. It was a tech company. It was actually right here in Royal Oak. We had scaled, and I worked for one of the few startups that actually got acquired, right? Less than 1% of startups get acquired. I worked for one of them, and it got acquired by a massive company. And it was a lot of fun, that exit. But I stayed on with that company for about a year after acquisition. And of course, like you always like have this hope that things are going to remain the same after you get acquired, but it never does. Like the second that ink dried, the company was different. And so I'm actually like thinking about it, like, why did I stay for that whole year? But there was a transition period. They treated me well. But eventually my position was made redundant, which, for anybody that's listening to this podcast, I'm sure you've been in that position. And so it's not fun, but here I was like, okay, so what do I do? Well, there was two people that I served on the executive team with of the original company that were in the go-to-market space, operations, sales, marketing. And they had left the firm earlier that year, earlier in 2019, and they went and started their own consulting firm. So when it was my turn to be made redundant, they had said, like, we all kind of went out for dinner, and they were like, Brad, you should do this. You should go into consulting. And I'm like, all right, let me think back at that point, my 13 years of experience. I'm like, I've helped a lot of small businesses. That's what I've done. And, the last 5 years, it's been in and out in terms of it becoming a side hustle to a part-time thing. And now for the last couple of years, it's just been my full-time thing, and it's my full-time focus. That is the origin of ScaleTX.
I've seen you grow it because we follow each other on LinkedIn, and we're always liking and posting throughout the day or week. And
And I appreciate that.
yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the thing. Anyone who's new to HR, if you're still in school or you're pivoting in your career, that's one thing that I will share is that we're here in Metro Detroit, is that HR is a community, and I'm sure every large city has their community, but we are all cheering each other on. And if I see you do well, that's a good thing. If I see someone else from Detroit SHRM do well, I'm there cheering them on. Doesn't mean someone else isn't doing well. It just means you're all there in each other's corners. So being a large community, whether it's through Detroit SHRM or just in the HR space alone and here in Metro Detroit or even virtual now, I think is key to building those relationships.
Absolutely.
So with ScaleTX, could you really elaborate on maybe the specific services that you offer to small, medium-sized businesses, particularly those without a dedicated HR lead?
I work with what I call just small businesses. And of course, that is a subjective term. So how I define it essentially is like 30 to 300. That's a small business to me. Whether it's like a family-owned business or not, that's kind of the world that I live in. And certainly like all of my content is geared towards that on LinkedIn. It's certainly like when I'm prospecting, those are the businesses that I target is 30 to 300. And what I do is I work with companies that are in that range that either have no HR on staff, like whatsoever, or they have somebody that is like their secondary function, but they're wearing the HR hat. That could be like the bookkeeper or the controller or the office manager or the executive assistant. Or if they do have somebody that's like actually has an HR title, for example, it's an HR generalist, coordinator, specialist, somebody more junior in their career. And what I do is I advise to businesses that fit those criteria to help them solve their HR challenges, elevate their HR department, no matter who I'm working with out of the people that I described, and mentor their HR team. That's what I do. So as like a advisor on an on-call basis, I'm there not only to help prepare your strategy and execute on a strategy out of the three things that I just listed, but I'm there to solve your everyday challenges. And being in HR, and especially working with the industries that I tend to work with, which are construction and manufacturing and warehousing, those issues, Jay, could come up to, well, we need a better process on how to request time off, all the way to, um, Brad, what do we do? Somebody punched another employee on the plant floor today. Right? Those are like, okay, we can solve this really easily, to okay, you need my help with this right now. Those are the things I kind of gave you two different ends of, the things that I will be always like a phone call away to help you solve.
Is there a story or two or an example of with ScaleTX where you're working with business leaders that really transform how they do business? Like they understand the value, like, okay, they get it now, like something that maybe they didn't anticipate. And you're like, wait a minute, you guys, this is a serious thing, or this is very common.
Yeah, and I know we didn't pre-discuss this, so this isn't a softball, but like I can give like an extremely relevant answer that is 30 days fresh. I started with a new client up in Midland, Michigan earlier this year, right at the beginning of the year. And one of my very first calls with them, I think it was number 2 or number 3, is I uncovered that basically anything that had to do with their employee benefits, they were doing all manual. Okay. So they were manual enrollments, manual changes, manual terminations. And what I mean by this, Jay, is like if any of those things happened, life events happened, then the employee would the HR team would give them the form. The employee would fill out the form, give it back to the HR person. They would track it on a dozen spreadsheets. They would contact the carriers and make the changes themselves. And this just happened. Like this wasn't, I guess, the premise of the call, but I uncovered it and I'm like, wait, let's stop here just for a second. And they're like, yeah, this is how we've been doing it for 40 years now. Okay. So I'm like, who's your benefit broker? And they tell me, and I go, okay, have they offered you this tool? This tool is called Employee Navigator, right? And most brokerage consulting firms, Jay, you're nodding your head
Yeah.
because you've heard of it, right? You're extremely familiar with it. And I was like, and they've never offered you Employee Navigator, which is the brokers that I work with. This is a free tool that they give to all of their clients, and they're like, no, we've never heard of it. And I'm like, okay, so you're a 300-person organization, like an internal HR department of one, and you've been doing all of this manual. And they're like, yeah. I think it was a week later that I was introducing them to a new broker, one of my partners, and a week after that, they signed with them. And as of this recording, Employee Navigator implementation is almost done for that particular client. So I mean, like, just they don't even understand. Like, they're getting it now that they've been going through the implementation, but like they don't even understand how much time this is going to save them. Just by one suggestion, they needed at that time somebody who with experience like myself to tell them exactly what they needed to do to solve a pain point that they didn't even realize they had. But now, like anything that's related to benefits, I just save them 99% of their time.
You have to see if you get a Christmas card or maybe meet with them for dinner or something later this year to say thank you, because they're going to get so much time of their day and work week back, especially open enrollment. And there's so many things that, I mean, just in talking just for a few minutes about that with you, wow. So
Yeah.
identifying those pain points like you do is really key. So with ScaleTX, that's what you do, is your
Yeah.
job, is your career and your passion. But the other thing I know you from around town is, of course, Detroit SHRM. As president of Detroit SHRM, really, what are your primary objectives for the organization?
For one, I want to give a lot of credit to the other 10 people who I serve on the board with. And most of them, Jay, were on the board when I was the president elect, which with Detroit SHRM, that's essentially the vice president. You know, we kind of go in order. Outsiders don't just become the president, is what I'm saying. So it's like this is my 7th year on the board. So most of the people that are serving with me now, I've been working with in this volunteer capacity for several years now, and all of them are my friends. And so, you know, I want to give a lot of thanks and credit to them as well, because managing the largest SHRM chapter in the state of Michigan is not easy. And I spend a lot of time, you know, doing volunteer work. And yes, volunteer, as in I don't get paid. Nobody gets paid for it, right? And it's a thriving organization. It's absolutely awesome. So my 3 goals that I laid out for the board last November, as I knew I was stepping into this role, are the same 3 goals that I announced to the entire membership at our Christmas party just this past year. And it's the same 3 goals that I'm going to tell you right now. Number 1 is continue to add value to our members. So, how do you do that? Well, 1, you have to have regular dynamic programming, opportunities to network with each other, opportunities to perhaps find a new job by knowing people and networking that way, and then responding to their inquiries in a timely manner, because that's a big part of just being on the board of Detroit SHRM is just the sheer volume of inquiries we get on a daily basis is a lot. Goal number 2 is continue to add value to our resource partners, which are essentially HR adjacent vendors. I'm one of them. ScaleTX is a resource partner of Detroit SHRM. And these are individuals, some that own their own companies, some that work at much larger firms that people are familiar with. That they're all on our website. But these are vendors that are pre-vetted by Detroit SHRM, and they get recognized at chapter meetings. So, you know, the membership, you know, of HR professionals, when they need a specific service at their company, we can say, hey, you should call this person, right? Or at this company. And so being able to continue to add value to those group of individuals is really important because they support us financially and they're fans of us, of course, of the chapter and attending our events. And then the final piece, of course, is to help maintain a sustaining chapter, right? And we do that just by like, I am a fiduciary of the finances, the money that Detroit SHRM has in our accounts, and not only to manage that, but to grow that, to leave that in an even more positive space when I leave than when I took it when I started. So those are my 3 goals: continue to add value to membership, continue to add value to our resource partners, and to be responsible with our finances and grow that.
If there's someone working in HR right now, whether they're a seasoned professional, they're fresh out of college and they're starting that first HR role, or they're still in school and they don't know what's next, they're trying to figure out how to even break into HR with their degree that's coming later this spring or next year, and they have not joined Detroit SHRM or a chapter where they live in another state. What are some things that they could look forward to? Because sometimes they might not even realize the resources available. They could be in Indiana or Texas, not even knowing there's a chapter in their area, or they're right here in Metro
Right.
Detroit. I would, if I know someone, I have recommended people go, hey, meet me there. I'll introduce you to some people. And it's a great networking event. You'll start meeting different people within HR at all different levels of HR within organizations. What are some things really to let that person know, like they should do, or hey, consider joining this?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for one, like the state of Michigan alone has, I think, 17 chapters, and we're not the largest state, but we're also not the smallest state. You live in a place like Texas, there's probably like 50, right? Maybe more. So it's like, it doesn't matter where like I've actually met people who are part of SHRM chapters in Alaska, where everybody, like, it's so big and people are spread out, but like I know those people. So, there are, wherever you live, there is a SHRM chapter nearby. I can assure you of that. For individuals, whether like you're about to graduate or maybe you are an experienced professional, but in a different field and you want to get into HR, SHRM of any chapter, right? I'm biased and I'm going to say if you're in this area, of course, come by the Detroit SHRM, but SHRM is a fantastic resource. You see the sweater I'm wearing. This is the logo of the national chapter. And so there's different levels. We have our national chapter, and that's like paid staff of an organization, I don't know, maybe 100, 200 employees that are in the DC area. And SHRM, they lobby in terms of like they shape a lot of the employment law decisions that get passed down from our capital. And so like they're a huge kind of behind the scenes force in the world of HR. And then they have these state provinces, and then they have these local chapters, and the local chapters with what said people can attend events on a regular basis, and it's something that I lead. It's a fantastic resource. Whether you are just graduating, wanting, experienced professional wanting to transition, or you are an experienced HR professional and you're staying in HR, SHRM's a fantastic resource, and I would absolutely advise going to an event just to, if nothing else, meet people. You're not going to be disappointed. I've never been to a SHRM event, whether it's my chapter or another, where I've been disappointed in just kind of the networking opportunities. And of course, you sign up, you get free access to content that you can, read about. And when you know that it's coming from SHRM, you're like, okay, this is a legitimate source of HR related news that I could use to better my career or get into a career that I've been really wanting to. It's great interview prep. That's another reason. So SHRM's a fantastic resource. I would advise being a member of the national chapter and one of your local chapters as well.
And I don't think I've ever left a SHRM event going. I think the only regrets I've had, I think, not getting to say hi to as many people as I wanted to. Because you start meeting, like you said, you develop friendships with people, share things on social media, or you want to know what they're up to with. And that's the thing, is that you start learning about people. It's not just what their career is or what their new title is. It's you start learning about their families and that cool vacation spot they went to, they told you they were doing a few months earlier. And it's like you really start connecting with people at all levels. It's great. Are there any upcoming events or initiatives with Detroit SHRM later this year? I know we had a big legislative change with ESTA
We
recently.
did. Yeah, we
And
did.
so that's one big thing. I know there's a lot of HR team members from all over just leaning on each other to make sure that the regulation, we all understand it. But as far as Detroit SHRM events, is there anything coming up in the spring, summer, or fall of this year that someone could look forward to?
Yeah, well, we have events for our particular chapter. We have events every month. And again, all of this stuff is right on our website. Our May event is our first ever, what we call ELA conference, ELLA, and that stands for Employment, Legislation, and Legal Affairs. I think I got that right. Again, it's on our website, but it's our first ever ELA conference. And in fact, Jay, other chapters in the country have done ELA conferences before. This isn't our idea. We're the first one in Michigan to do a conference like this. And so it's going to be a half-day conference. It's in downtown Detroit. And we have 3 speakers, all with legal backgrounds, that are going to be speaking on different topics that we're really looking forward to. Our all-day conference, will be our fourth annual. Our all-day conference is in November. Again, that is also on our website. I believe the date is November 6th. And that conference is fantastic. There's going to be about 400 people there because that's just what the attendance has been, give or take, the last couple of years. And all HR professionals. There'll be a lot of vendors that you can speak to that could certainly be a benefit to your business. We'll have fantastic programming. And so really looking forward to that. But we have an event every month. So all the months that I skipped in between, there'll certainly be an event. So follow us on LinkedIn, constantly go to our website. And when we open up events for registration, that's where they are.
Looking ahead, future opportunities and challenges for small and medium-sized businesses, do you see any emerging trends that are going to impact HR practices for the clients you serve at that 30 to 300 person level?
I can tell you what, the clients that I serve, again, when we talk about manufacturing, construction, warehouse, these industries are massively hit by the labor and talent shortages. And guess what? Like even large companies feel that burn as well. I mean, it's difficult to get a hold of people that even want to do the work, let alone can do the work, you know? And so I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. So that's certainly going to be a challenge for small businesses because then you kind of get into the conversation. Well, if everybody is facing these types of challenges, whether they're a small business or a large business, well, how else do you compete? And if you're going on financial resources alone, then who do you think is going to be able to win out on that talent? Right? Of course, it's going to be large companies. So that certainly is going to be a challenge. And then I would also just say that the use of AI, when we talk about that particular topic, yes, there's free resources, but make AI a partner essentially. These are big company tools. They're expensive tools. And again, when you're a small business, you may not necessarily have the resources to even use that, which AI in itself is to help. One of the reasons is to help with your talent shortages, right? Taking jobs that nobody wants to do and perhaps automating them. But then when you don't have the financial resources to even do that, that's certainly a challenge. Everything's going to be, I would say it's none in particular that's to a small business. They're facing the same challenges large ones are. Their own unique challenges is that larger companies in general are going to have more financial resources to win out on the competition more.
What advice would you offer to CEOs or business owners of the small, medium-sized business that are currently navigating those people-related challenges without an in-house lead? Is there anything that jumps out?
The work that I do, because I am essentially serving as that in-house lead. I'm just not in-house. But my clients can come to me whenever they want. We have a regular weekly meeting and then they can call me in between those meetings. And so like the advice that I give, whether it's on kind of the two issues that the two ends of extremes, like, hey, we want to improve this process, or hey, we had somebody punch another employee in the face, right? How do we deal with that? Those are just two examples of the type of stuff that I advise my clients on. But look, anybody that's in any type of consulting, whether it's HR or finance, one of the biggest challenges, Jay, is always like ensuring that your clients know that you are available to them, right? Is because a lot of times I may not hear from them for a week and I'll get on my next call and they're like, oh, this happened. And they handled it in the wrong way. Not the way that I would have handled it, I guess, right? And I'm like, well, why didn't you call me? And they're like, oh, we didn't want to bother you, or like we thought this was the right way. And so it's like again, like anybody that's in any type of advisory consultant work, finance, marketing, whatever the HR, whatever the case may be, it's like, folks, you're paying for a service. The best thing that you can do is always remember that I'm a phone call away to help you solve these challenges. So that's the advice that I give, to especially when I immediately start off a new engagement with a client. As I say, hey, more that you call me and come to me for these types of issues, the more value you're going to get out of this engagement.
Yeah, I think that's key. Talked to an employment attorney recently, and he said the same thing. A 15-minute phone call can save you so much in time, money, headaches, everything. So, like you said, whether it's an employee punched someone or they just had a quick question on the benefits thing you talked about earlier, that you ended up finding a solution right away.
Right. Yeah,
So,
I
look at
know.
all the time and resources you'll save going forward. So I'd like to jump into what I call the Encore section, have some fun with some unique questions so we can always keep the human and human resources. If you were to share your Spotify playlist, Apple Music, Amazon Music, whatever you listen to, vinyl, what are some artists you would find?
Okay. So I'm the biggest nerd when it comes to this stuff. I don't have a favorite band. I've never owned a CD in my life. And look, I'm 41 years old, so it's like I grew in the age where like tapes a little bit, but CDs dominated the majority of my forming years, junior high, college, right? And then I'm sorry, junior high, high school. And then it wasn't until basically after I graduated college that everything went digital. I don't have a favorite band, you know, so my particular like playlist is just I hear a song, I like a song, I buy a song. That's what I do. So, you know, anything that has a good melody, so it doesn't matter if it's like an oldie or jazz to blues to rock to pop to whatever. As long as the song has a good melody and I'm like, hey, I really like this song, the lyrics, right? Then I'm like, okay, let me go on iTunes or Apple Music and I buy it for like $1.29 and then it's on my phone forever. And so like when I'm like working and I'm listening to music on my AirPods, you know, I press play and it's just shuffles. So I could be listening to Whitney Houston one song and then Madonna the next. It doesn't, you know, like it doesn't matter. So it just goes from one to the other, my friends. So yeah, there's going to be a ton of like music lovers that are going to be like, oh my gosh, this guy is the worst. I'm just not into it like most people are with music, and that's ironic being the podcast that I'm on right now.
That's okay, but I think some of those artists that you named, or any of the artists that you download or you pay for that one song, they appreciate that because usually around every December, January, I get royalty checks once a year for when our stuff was either streamed, and it's usually between $8 and $11 that in theory I'm supposed to be splitting four ways. And I text the people in the band and go, look, and I'll even post a picture saying Lars was right. Hashtag Napster.
There you go. There
And
you
I'm like,
go.
I'll buy you guys a drink next time. It's like, wait a minute, this won't even buy a drink for barely one
No, it
person, let
won't even
alone
buy
four
one
or five.
drink. That's right. That's right. Yeah, I
So,
know.
what is a guilty pleasure that a food, TV shows?
Well, I already told you I watched like an insane amount of baseball.
Yeah.
Like it drives my wife insane. That's why I used the term. I mean, I watch a lot of baseball. And baseball games last like 2.5 hours. I mean, so it's like a nightly thing. I'm not kidding. Like every night it's on in my house. So I guess that's a guilty pleasure, a hobby, right? You mentioned food. So I mean, duh, I'm an American, like a cheeseburger, you know, who doesn't like a cheeseburger? And it's my favorite burger is at the Royal Oak Brewery, which is a restaurant that's been here in town for 30 years now. And it's by far my favorite burger. So nice, medium rare with cheese, mustard and mayo. No ketchup. I don't eat ketchup. So mustard and mayo is the sauces, and then lettuce, tomato, onion, pickle with a beer and some fries. Jay, my man, weekly meal right there. I can tell you that right now.
Sounds delicious.
Gosh, it's so good. They cook it. They cook it exactly how I want it. Oh boy, my mouth's watering right now. I might have to go get some dinner.
What is a fun or unique fact that many people may not know about you?
I hope I don't get messages for this, but I used to be an actor. Yeah, I mean, you see like a movie poster and back, and like I'm in my basement. I got movie posters all over the place. Jack Nicholson's my favorite actor, by the way. So that he's getting featured. But I used to be an actor at 21 years old. I had been in two independent films that were at the Royal Oak Main Art Theater, and I spent a lot of time doing acting in my younger years, and I stopped. I didn't want to do it anymore. So I mean, look, these things weren't like big budget, like they were independent films. Don't get me wrong, right? But with that said, you know, it was a lot of fun, and I did not want to pursue that professionally at all. So I'm so much happier doing what I'm doing now. So yeah. So
Some independent movies, I mean, are classics. I mean, look at Clerks, Kevin Smith,
there
Blair
you
Witch
go.
Project.
Yeah, my independent movies were like nothing like that. So maybe I was like a sub independent. Yeah. So you know, it's I just know I was in movies. They were on a big screen. So I can that's whatever you want to describe that as.
That's awesome. All right, last question. What is the last show you binge watched, whether by yourself or with your family
Oh,
or wife?
yeah, my wife and we were huge Walking Dead fans when it was like the original series. And what the original series ended 2 years ago. 3 years ago. But they've done like so many spin-offs since then. And we just watched both seasons. There were 6 episodes each, so we watched like 12 episodes, like in a matter of 3 days, of the Daryl Dixon, who was like basically the main character, one of the main characters of the original series. He got his own show, and it's after the original series ends, and he ends up in Paris, and you don't know how he ends up in Paris. And like these 2 seasons are about him trying to get back home to America. Well, of course, there's bad guys and there's zombies, and so like my wife and I, we binged like 2 or 3 episodes a night for like 4 nights straight. But it was so entertaining, Jay. I'm telling you, like the kids were in bed. We're like, we shouldn't be staying up this late, type of thing. But like you watch one episode and you're like, I don't care what type of punishment I'm going to take tomorrow morning. We're watching another episode, but like it was fun. It was fun to do.
Some of those shows are worth that extra cup of coffee in the morning when you're like, I'm hooked. I got to
Yeah,
finish it.
I agree. I agree.
Brad, this has been, a really insightful and inspiring conversation. And I really appreciate you sharing your story and expertise. For those that want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you if they want to have a question on your services or Detroit SHRM?
Well, for both, you can just go right to LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can follow me. My contact information is there, my email and my phone number. So I'd love to, if you are a small business owner who's struggling with just anything HR related, I would love a chance to talk to you. If nothing else, I can point you in the right direction. And also, if you are interested in getting involved with SHRM, Detroit SHRM, you can email me with my contact information there, or you can go right to our website and there's actually an intake form that you can just fill out. And that form with, all the details that you filled out, they get sent and filtered through the board.
Great. Well, I know I'm going to see you at an event in the near
That's
future.
right. Yeah.
So, all right. If you found value in today's episode, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Until next time, keep rocking HR excellence.